Hi, so today we're talking to Meghan Sensabaugh. This is very exciting for me. Meghan is Carly's stepmom. She's been in her life since she was 3. She also has an almost 4-year-old daughter, Aubrey, who's Carly's sister. So we're going to talk a little bit today about how it's been being in each other's lives for, gosh, over 12 years, right?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I know.
I don't even remember life without you, I think.
I know. I kind of feel the same way.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
So just to kind of get it started, like we can take it back to the beginning a little bit. I know obviously you and John met at work, and we had kind of recently split up. So you can kind of talk about how you felt, maybe like any initial reluctance because he had a kid and we had just recently split up, or
Yeah, absolutely. And when you say it that way, gosh, it sounds funny. But no, I think the thing that for me, I always had felt that our relationship was so different. The way that it started. It wasn't like John was like, "Oh, I like you. Let's go on a date." I knew that obviously your marriage had ended. I knew that he had Carly with you. And to me, I just felt so strongly that if I was going to be in John's life, that meant that I was going to be a part of Carly and part of you. And so after multiple conversations and talking about it, because it really was important to me to know, everything. I wanted to know about, why your marriage had ended. I wanted to know about just the dynamic, the relationship, everything about you and your family, John and his, Carly. All of that was really important to me to know. I think I told Carly that I rejected John. It's not that I necessarily rejected him per se. It's just those were all things that I wasn't going to jump into something because I didn't want to create any chaos. I didn't want to in any way create any or be a part of any conflict. And very specifically, I felt, especially with a child being involved, I never wanted to create or be a part of any trauma for her, and that was really important to me. And so what a lot of people don't know is that our relationship really was slow in so many ways. And I think, he obviously talked to you about me meeting Carly.
yes.
And
What's funny? I don't even remember that.
yeah.
I don't even remember that. And I think was I reluctant at first?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I don't know the conversation. I know that I was not going to meet her unless you were okay with it.
Yeah.
And I also, if you weren't okay in general, truthfully, I wouldn't have moved forward with a relationship with John.
Yeah, good call, because, that's a lot.
I mean, it is. I mean, honestly, it is. Meghan, you know me. I don't like conflict.
Yeah.
I'm an introvert. I like to keep the peace. So that was not something that I wanted to be a part of.
Right, and you had never dated anyone with kids or anything, right?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and your parents are married. You don't have step siblings or anything like that, right? So that's a lot too. I feel like, how did your parents feel about you dating someone that had a kid or your brother? Because it's just something,
so
people get nervous about things like that.
And I think the thing is that we didn't really my family didn't necessarily have a model of someone else to relate that to.
Right.
Surprisingly, my brother was incredibly supportive. Super, super supportive. I mean, he is very, he's probably one of the harder ones in the family in general, but he was hands down the most supportive.
Oh.
I do remember my dad saying to me, without knowing everyone, they hadn't met John yet, obviously didn't know you or Carly. And I do remember him saying to me, I don't know if this should happen.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, Meghan, I was in my mid-20s.
Yeah, you're not a young kid.
I had already lived on my own. I mean, I had my own apartment. I moved back. I went to school in Florida, after I graduated, stayed there for a while, decided to move home because I wanted to be closer to my family.
Yeah.
But, to hear my dad say that, it was kind of funny. It was like, well, I don't know if you really get
that I can just make this decision.
Yeah. But I think because Patrick my brother was so supportive, I kind of felt at peace with it. I felt like I felt like it was going to be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny, and we can talk kind of more about like how you felt about my relationship with John's family too.
Yeah.
But I can remember his parents took me and Carly out shopping, like for school clothes or something for her. Yeah. 'Cause they have always been just amazing grandparents to her. And they've always been so kind to me, even after John and I split up and everything like that.
Yeah.
But they took us out because they had recently, I think, gone out to dinner with you and John to meet you. And I think they wanted to like kind of just like tell me that you were nice. That's what I felt like.
Oh my goodness, I didn't know this.
Yeah. So they took us out to dinner, and I can remember like being in the Burlington Mall, and you know how Dave is, and he's like, Meg, like she's really nice. I think she really like would be great for Carly, and like she really cares about Carly. She's not trying to like cause any problems or anything like that. And gosh, I was so young.
Sure, yeah.
Thinking back on it, I'm like, what was I was 25, I think.
Yeah.
When all this was happening, and I was just like, okay, like, whatever. And then you and I ended up meeting in the Woburn Target parking lot.
Yeah, I do, because we were supposed to take Carly to a movie, but she had fallen asleep in the car.
Yes.
So we decided that we were just going to rip off the Band-Aid and meet in the Target parking lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah.
I remember that very vividly.
Yeah, and I think, it's weird because, and obviously now being a step parent and knowing the other path that a relationship like this can take, like I never wanted to have a problem with you. Like to me, I was always kind of like, well, if this is who John is like deciding to have in his life, like I have to trust him enough that he wouldn't bring someone who wasn't going to be good for Carly into her life. So I think that's just kind of like the path that I took with it. I think like it's funny to a lot of people because they're like, oh, you just like get along, and I'm like, yeah, like we do. Like I don't know. I just never wanted to have a problem with you. Yeah. And I think that's kind of like the route that you took too.
Well, and it was, and I just felt so strongly. I mean, I never came in, Meghan, with the idea, like I never wanted to in any way take away your role as Carly's mother.
Right.
I never wanted to interfere with that. If anything, I just wanted to support it. I never wanted to be that leading role. Happy to be that, positive, strong female role model to Carly. But I've always, even to this day, have turned to you as you're her mom. That doesn't mean that, I don't see Carly as my daughter.
Yes.
She is mine. And I know I can say that to you, and you understand that.
100%.
And that's not taking anything away from you. But I think with everything. I'm sure probably even to a point, it might have been a little much at points where I would reach out to you and text you, and really run things by you because I wanted to make sure that you were okay with everything as her mother, and it was so important to me that I gained your trust and respect and never wanted to in any way overstep at all or make you feel uncomfortable. That was really important to me.
Yeah, and I think maybe that's why, like, just thinking back, because it was really a long time ago,
yeah.
you know, I think maybe that is why, like, we've always gotten along, because I never felt like you were, like, trying to be her mom or anything like that.
Yeah.
But for me, I felt really happy and really strong about the fact that when she was at John's, that you were there. You know, like, that you could braid her hair and that you could, you know, like, that you could help get her ready for school and things like that. Like, it made me happy that she did have another mom in the house, because, you know, from having a young daughter too, like, God, it's so hard when they're so little and you're just like, okay, I'm not going to see you for the next 3 days. It's horrible, you know, like, thinking about it, I'm like, I guess I just pushed through at the time.
I cannot even, yeah.
You know, and I think now having another set of young kids, because I have Cammie and Cece, and that time is kind of all like a blur to me. But I think now I'm like, oh my God, like, I struggled so much with just not always seeing my daughter. I mean, I can remember when you guys were going on that cruise.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And I was so stressed.
So was I. Because I hated boats at the time, yeah.
And it wasn't because I was happy you were going, because I was like, okay, like, you know, Meghan will be there, John will be there, and you know, obviously no one in the family would ever let anything bad happen to Carly.
Right, of course.
But I'm like, she's just gonna be gone for a week. I think it was a week long or 8 days. It was so long, and I'm like, on a cruise, like, we're not gonna have any contact, and that was really hard. Those things were really, really hard. But it did, honestly, and I'm saying this truthfully, and I can remember saying to my mom, because my mom would almost feel a little jealous on my behalf sometimes. Like, if Carly came home with, like, French braided pigtails or something, like, she would be like, oh, who did her hair? And I'd be like, oh, Meghan did. Like, and it didn't bother me, but I think it bothered my mom a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, and I completely understand that.
Yeah. But I can remember saying to my mom, like, no, like, I'm just happy that Meghan's there. Like, that makes me feel, like, secure. Like, that makes me feel better that she has, like, a mom in the house with her. And I still feel that way, you know, now that she's a teenager and she, you know, lives with you guys during the week. So she's with you more than she is with me at this point, which is hard. It's something I struggle with, you know. It's what's best for her right now, and that's okay, you know. It's hard because of her having sisters in both houses and how much the babies do miss her. But again, just to go back to kind of like what we were saying, I'm just still really glad that she has a mom in the house, you know.
I just have always felt very early on such a responsibility, not only obviously to Carly, for sure, but to you for care of Carly. I'm trying, like, not to cry. I told myself I'm not going to. I never wanted to disappoint you. It didn't, you know, because I do realize, and I realized very early on what a big deal that was. Even, you know, I didn't have any children of my own at that point, but I still recognized that was such a big thing.
Yeah, I think you're honestly such a maternal person. I think, like, even just, like, you know, at you and John's wedding, which I was there. You know, like to hear your friends talk about it and things like that. Like you are, like you said, you're quiet and you're an introvert, but you have like those mom instincts. So I think you always kind of recognize that in mine and Carly's relationship was important, and that, like, you know, I am her mom, and that, like, that needs to be respected, right?
1,000%. Yeah.
You know, did you ever feel like when you and John first got together, like that you were uncomfortable with mine and his relationship?
Listen, I think, you know, it's been 12 plus years.
Yeah.
So like, I feel like I can truly, if you had asked me that question at that moment, I probably would have answered differently.
Yeah.
But I think that it was necessary. To be honest with you, I think the way that we went about, you know, I never set any boundaries, Meghan. Like, I know that you talked about this in past episodes with you and Kyle. Like, I didn't have boundaries. I didn't have that you, like, can only communicate this, or like, and I think the thing that was tough for me, but I just kind of just felt like it was necessary, was you and John know everybody. Like, Carly and I have, like, a running joke. Like, she knows that if she goes out with me, she's safe. Like, it is unlikely that we are going to run into somebody, like, every step that, like, we take as we walk throughout wherever it is that we are. Whereas you and John literally know everybody everywhere.
Yeah, and you moved back to what is mine and John's hometown.
I know.
Right?
And I think the tough part, the thing that I would get so upset with John was that when we would go places, even if you were with us, he would never introduce me to anybody. And I would get so upset about that.
Yeah.
And I realized it wasn't like he was trying to, like, hide me or like he was uncomfortable. He was so used to you knowing everybody.
Yeah, that it didn't even dawn on him.
It never dawned on him that he had to introduce me. And I think it was just that I struggled at times because you guys were so friendly with each other.
Yeah.
That there were times where I was just like, I don't understand why it didn't work. I mean, we had talked about this later, you know, but I think at that moment, I just was like, are you sure?
Yeah. No, I get it.
You know?
And, like, we were so much friendlier at that point because we were not friendly to each other when we were married.
I know. We talked about that.
Yeah. But thinking back on it, like, from your perspective at the time, you probably were like, what the hell? Like, why don't you guys, like, you know?
Like, I don't want to, I don't want to be a homewrecker. Like, I'm not looking, like, I mean, like, you guys, if it's going to work, like, you know.
Yeah. And I can see, like, why at that time you would have been like, oh, this is a little weird, you know. Our relationship has definitely evolved now. I mean, to be honest with you, I talk more to you than I talk to John, just because that's just kind of like, now that Carly's older and has a phone, like, we don't have to communicate with each other constantly. You know, obviously some things, like if something happens at school or whatever, you know, he'll call me or whatever, but it's definitely, we were really focused back then on, like, not having things be hard for Carly.
Right.
And it probably was too much at the time, you know, but I just think we didn't know any other way to, like, not make it tough.
Right. But I think, like, looking back at it, it was necessary. It was necessary for Carly. And what I think was so beautiful about it, though, Meghan, is that she was such a happy kid.
She was, yeah.
You know, she was so happy, and I didn't feel like she was negatively affected by it, because nothing made her more happy than seeing us all together and seeing us get along. And I mean, you know, as things had progressed, I mean, again, you came to our wedding, and that was so important to me.
Yeah.
That we would go to parent-teacher conferences together. We would go to events together.
Yeah, we would do Christmas.
I mean, we would do Christmas together. I mean, there were so many things because that was so important to be able to support Carly, and I loved that.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think that helped her develop, like, strong relationships with all of us too, because I don't think she ever felt like we were against each other. I mean, you and I would just take her out or, you know, whatever. But it is funny to think of, like, this just reminded me when you said I was at your wedding. I think some people that were there felt like, oh, this is weird, right?
Yeah.
Like,
no, listen, Meghan, I mean, I think, I can't remember who, I really honestly don't remember who, but I think it was just like, I was talking about how we were having a smaller wedding. It was really important to us, to everybody that was there. We wanted there because they were so supportive of our relationship, and people that, you know, really loved and wanted that feeling, that intimate feeling of just celebrating with everybody. And John and I, you know, had the conversation separately, like, before we, like, open it up to the parents, you know, and everyone, of, like, who they wanted to invite. We really wanted to identify who was important to us, that it was just, like, non-negotiable. And it was just collectively, we're just like, well, Meghan and her family.
Yeah.
Like,
because my parents came. My grandparents were invited. They couldn't come because my grandpa had got sick, but my sisters.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, and it was so nice. It was such a fun wedding. I think it was awesome for Carly that we were all together.
My favorite picture is the one with you and Carly.
Yeah, and we're watching you guys have your first dance, and I think that was just, like, so nice. But I can remember we were sitting there watching the ceremony, and a longtime friend of John's, his parents were there, and his mom kept, and I love her, but it was just so funny, she kept looking back at me, like, almost with, like, a, are you okay? And I'm like, and my mom and I were laughing, like, because I'm like, I wouldn't be here if I wasn't okay.
Right.
You know, like, just because I'm not married or whatever. Like,
I do know, you know, and I don't want to call them out, but I do know that there was one person that was just like, I could never do that. Like, for you, like, I could never do that. Yeah. And I just think that not everybody knew our relationship. And I know that it is different, you know, like, I know it's not the norm, you know, I know that so often, you know, it can be the opposite.
Yeah. I mean, I live it. And, like, you texted me on Carly's birthday this year, just, you know, like, and I won't share what you said, but it was just such a kind message. And I said to you, like, I'm really grateful too, because I know what this could have been and how difficult that can be on the kids. And I'm not saying, like, we're perfect or that, like, John and I never disagree on what is the best thing for Carly or anything like that. But I think it's
natural, though, you know, for any relationship. I mean,
right. I mean, just like, I'm sure you and John don't always agree on what's right for Aubrey, or Kyle and I don't always agree on what's wrong with what's good for the other girls. And you have to talk about it, right? And I think as Carly's gotten older, there's been more of that, right? Because I just think things change and things evolve and things feel more important when they're older.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Right? You're talking more about their life.
The big stuff.
Yeah, the big stuff, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, she's crazily enough only about 2 years away from being an adult and going to college, and, you know, there's just a lot, you know, and but I do think just us having the generally good relationship that we do has contributed to like Carly's third grade teacher being like, I had no idea that Carly's parents were divorced.
Yeah.
Like she's like, I would never have guessed that she came from a home with divorced parents.
I hope you don't mind me calling out Meghan, but while I wasn't there, I think it's something to note when you and John did get divorced, went to the actual like hearing and everything, your response to each other. And I think even those that were there were surprised by your response. I don't know if that's something that you want to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm pretty sure when we walked out of the chambers, like we gave each other a hug.
Yeah.
And like it really was like, I just want you to have a good life too, because if you have a good life, then that means Carly's going to have a good life.
And I think collectively that has always just been unanimous between the two of you. Like if you're in a good place, then Carly's in a good place, and like vice versa.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think, I know you guys always liked Kyle, but I do think like the speed of our relationship was kind of jarring to you at the time,
I think, again, like it's been almost 6 years.
Yeah, crazy. We'll both be married 6 years this year. Yeah.
And thinking about when you came over to our house, in that conversation, honestly, Meghan, we haven't talked about it.
No.
Since then.
No. That was tough. That was a tough conversation.
Yeah, it was. And I think about it, and I think about, our response and how tough. I kind of was sad to some degree that Kyle wasn't there.
Yeah.
I felt like he should have been. Also for you. Yeah. But here's the thing. We love Kyle. He's amazing. He is such a good dad, and such a hard worker and just a good person. So we love Kyle and are so thrilled that you found your person. Yeah. I don't think there's ever been a moment, Meghan, where personally that I didn't want that for you. Like I always wanted that for you.
Yeah. And I know that. Yeah.
And I wanted you to have your person. I wanted you to be able to get married and grow your family and have your home. And I wanted that for Carly for you too.
Yeah.
I think just as far as, in that moment for my response, any hesitation that I had was honestly strictly just based off of what you had shared with me.
Right.
Truly.
Right, because you guys knew kind of like the background at that point.
Yeah, because keep in mind, like John and I got married in March, of that year. It was 2018. Mm-hmm. And I think at that point, like, things were kind of like at a pause or like on and off.
Mm-hmm. Up and down, big time.
And you and I also, somewhere between then, and I feel like it was maybe your sister's wedding, you and I went out to dinner and we like had talked about it. We had only met Kyle truly once. And then, like, I think we saw him, like, in passing, like, whether it was, like, a Carly's, like, softball or, like, something like that. So, really was just going based off of what you had shared. Yeah. And so I think, like, it's not that I didn't trust you. It was just, it was a feeling of, gosh, like, something, like, I'm nervous. Yeah. I'm nervous for you, and that was hard. But I think, like, obviously looking back at it, the only point where I was disappointed, and it probably is not the best word to use, was I just felt like we had worked so hard to have the relationship that we did. And I think just across the board, communication was always, something that we really did really well. And I felt like, again, like we were like a trio,
yeah.
you know, and
yeah.
like, I was super excited. Like I wanted to like welcome Kyle. And like, I don't know how he felt about it. I'm actually kind of curious. I wanted to like welcome him into the group. And I'm sure that was probably also a little odd for him. Like, what do you mean? Like,
yeah.
you know, but, maybe that wasn't the right expectation to also have, that like he was just gonna be like, okay,
yeah, we're a foursome like, now,
like,
yeah,
hey, you know. But I think like the only part that I just felt like collectively we could have done better was just the communication piece.
Yeah,
you know, and the reason for that was Carly is so fiercely loyal to the people that she loves.
Very.
Like everybody is in the circle that she loves. But then above that is you and John.
Yeah.
And, you know, I so identify with that because that's how I feel about, you know, everybody that I love. But for Carly, you know, and I'm smiling because like it truly is like, it's okay if she's upset with you. But if somebody else is upset with you, it's good luck. I mean, like,
cannot.
Good luck. Like, she just won't have it. She won't stand for it. And she's such a sweet kid, but she will destroy you. Like, she won't have it.
She could be saying something to me about being upset with her dad.
Yeah.
And even if I agree, even if I'm just saying, I know, Carl's, that's really tough. He didn't mean it like that. And you shouldn't be saying. And I'm like, I just was agreeing with you.
Right. No, and it is literally the same way, you know, and I think that because of that, in that instance, it was obviously a transition for her.
100%. Yeah.
And I think that she, because of that loyalty, I think she was afraid of hurting you and your feelings, and like didn't want, I think she was afraid in many ways of us like turning against you, which would never have happened. And I think because of that, like she kind of shut down, you know, and I felt like we could have so easily had supported her because we wanted, you know, to be able to also help you help her.
Right. It wasn't
that,
like
you know what I mean?
Yeah, it wasn't like you guys didn't want me to get married or didn't want
I wanted, you know, for you to have that happily ever after. I never didn't not want that, you know, and I wanted it to work.
Yeah. I think looking back, I can definitely see like what you're saying, because like you said, we've never talked about this before. Since that night, and then it was just basically like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, right.
But you did bring it. No, you did bring it up to me. We had curriculum night, and you were like, I just want to make sure like that we're good. And I do remember you saying that to me. But that was kind of it. I do think I could have kept you guys in the loop a little bit more. You know, like, okay, this is happening. I just want to let you guys know, like, we are moving towards moving in together, and we're probably going to get married. And because I think, like, as much as I felt like maybe I didn't have to do that.
And honestly, Megan, I do want to, like, clarify, like, at the same time, it's that tough, like, I don't need to know everything that's going on in your, you know, I mean, like, I think that it was just more so about because of the speed of it.
Yeah.
And helping Carly. Like, it was never about, like, well, I need a background check on, like, Kyle, and, like, I need to know this. And, like, I didn't, you know, like, I didn't need a play-by-play of your relationship.
Right. But I do think, like, up to that point, I had been, like, telling you guys kind of, like, what was going on. Or if you would ask me how things were going, I would tell you guys. Then it was kind of, like, radio silence. And then I'm coming to your house and being like, oh, by the way, we're getting married.
Right.
So, like, I can see this the kind of, like, surprise from you guys' end, right? And I do think, just thinking about it, like, I should have brought Kyle with me, and I don't know why I didn't.
Yeah.
Like, looking back on it.
And I think that, truthfully, like, I mean, like, it's fine. But, like, I think had he had gone or come along, that
the conversation would have maybe like been a little different, I think.
Yeah. And I think like as far as comfort and even talking about like, okay, like let's figure out like, you know, for Carly, like let's, you know, support her, you know, in a way that she knows that maybe like we don't all have to hang out like we did before, but that we are still one unit.
Yeah. That she knows that she has all of our support.
Yeah.
Because I do think that was tough for Carly at first with Kyle. She felt so fiercely loyal to her dad. I had dated, but nothing like that. I don't think she ever felt like I was going to marry somebody else. I mean, it had really been her and I for 7 years, I think, at that point, right? I mean, it was a long, you know, it was a long time that it was her and I, you know, and I think she is smart and she knew, obviously, and I was telling her, like, I don't think, like, I wasn't keeping it from her, but I think she felt kind of caught, like, oh my God, should I say this to my dad and Meghan, and should I, you know, like, is this going to hurt my dad's feelings, even though he's already married to somebody else? Is he going to feel like I think Kyle's my dad now or whatever? Because at the time we did have like more split custody. Like it was, you know, she spent, I think, an equal time with you guys that she did with us. So, you know, she'd be spending as much time with Kyle as she would be with John. And I think she was just like, it was a whirlwind for her. And Kyle and I have talked about that on previous episodes of the podcast. And I want to interview her too. I think like I kind of want to put that behind like a paywall. I'm not sure that like I just want to release it to the public, you know?
Yeah.
Just for her own privacy and things like that.
Yeah.
But, you know, she went from being a 10-year-old kid who was alone in your house, who was alone in my house, to living with a ton of, you know, living with 2 other girls at my house and Kyle.
Yeah.
Then I got pregnant. Then you got pregnant. Then I got pregnant again.
Right.
So, you know,
huge transition.
Huge transition. Yeah. So I think you're right. I think collectively we all maybe could have done a better job at that point of like figuring out, but like in fairness, we had never gone through anything like that before.
No. And you know, I think like for what it was, like it's fine. You know what I mean? Like I don't think that that there is any faults or necessarily missteps. I just think that, you know, going off of, you know, the time before that, it was just pure open communication nonstop, you know, for her. So I think that was an adjustment for me, you know, and I just think that I wanted you to be able, I knew that like you were going through a lot. It was a transition for you too.
Yeah.
You know, sure. I mean, you talk about like blended families and you had 2 other girls, you know, that you were trying to build a relationship with. And like, I didn't in any way want to like interfere or like, you know, I think looking back, like, I think that just as I said, like, I always turned to you to being like, you know, the leading role for Carly. I think I was waiting for that cue from you, you know, to say like, hey, like, let's catch up, or like, you know, and I wish in that moment that I had been like, hey, like, let's chat, you know, like,
yeah, let's go get dinner or something. Like, let's kind of like reconvene almost, right? Yeah. Like, yeah. I think it was hard for both of us. I think it was just, that year was crazy, right? Like, you guys got married and then I got married and then I was also pregnant, you know, and that was like, and I can remember being like nervous to tell you and John, and I went to, it's like so funny. It's like,
I mean, it is funny because
it's like, it's kind of like how you were saying how your dad was like, I don't think this should happen. Like, and you're like, but I'm a grown up, like, you know, but, I remember I went to, I had a therapy appointment, and she was like, you got to tell them. You can't just not tell them that you're pregnant.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, like, you know.
She's like, it's not like, you know, whatever.
Like, just show up one day with a baby, like, hey.
But I do think, like, yeah, the communication between us kind of changed at that point, right? Because up until that point, I was almost like a part of your family.
Yeah.
You know, in a way, like, I would come to Christmas morning and and stuff like that. Yeah. And then obviously, of course, it's just the nature of things. Like, now I'm married to someone else, and we have our family, and things can't be the same that they always were between us. So I think we kind of had to find a new normal. Yeah. You know, which I think we have. Like, obviously, our relationship is good, and John and Kyle get along really well, like, which is great. And obviously you and I always have, but it's definitely interesting as we talk about it, just to like see the evolution over the 12 years of like the ups and downs of being the mom and the stepmom. Yeah. You know, like, and then do you feel like your feelings about being, like, did you ever have the feelings like that I have about, like, oh, Carly's been with me for, like, you know, 2 weeks, or like I've been helping her through her sickness, and now she's like, I just want to go see my mom. Like, does that ever give you like not jealousy, but like a kind of like, really? Like, I've been doing everything for you. Like,
no, I think that it's more it's tough in the sense that, you know, from one end, like, I want her to have time with you. Yeah. Like, I'm sad when she doesn't, you know, like, I know how hard that is for you. But on the other end, selfishly, like, I always want Carly to be with us. Yeah. Because, like, as I said, like, she is mine, you know, and I just so deeply and fiercely love her. And she just, like, I can't imagine my life without her, you know? And so when she is with us, like, our family feels complete. Right. Like, when she's not, it doesn't feel right.
I think that's probably a good way to put it, because I think that's like it's the same way that I feel. Like, I'm like, if everyone else is home, but Carly's not, like, I never feel whole. Right. Right? It's like, you don't feel, you know, if it's just you, John, and Aubrey, like, you miss Carly. Yeah. Of course. Yeah. Like, you can't, that's your family. Like, you, John, Carly, and Aubrey. And it just, like, my family is not complete unless all of my girls are there. Like, it's like almost like missing an arm. Yeah. You know? And I think that's probably, like, the best way to describe, like, the difficult feelings that you have as a stepmom, because you're right. Like, ideally, the best thing for my stepkids is to have a good relationship with their mom. Yeah. That's what you want for everyone. You know, both you and I are very close to our moms. Like, you know, like, that's what, especially as a daughter, you want that closeness with your mom. So it's like, good, like, go see her, go spend time with her. Yeah. But I miss you every second that you're not here. Yeah. You know? Yeah. And I think for me, like, I've always wanted Carly to spend as much time with John as she possibly can. Yeah. Like, that's her dad. Like, that's, you know, like, just because I'm her mom doesn't mean that I should get more time with her. Like, that never made sense to me. I always wanted him to be able to see her as much as possible.
And I think that's something that's really important to call out, Meghan, about you, is that the flexibility that you had very early on was so great for Carly. You know, like if John had something going on with his family, some event, and it was your time, it was never like, well, this is my time, you can't have her. That never happened, and vice versa. You both had such great flexibility across the board, and I think that made it so easy for Carly.
Yeah, I think that was, I'm really, really happy that we were like that at the beginning, because now I do know that Carly feels like, you know, she called me yesterday from school and
she's texting us.
I know.
Yeah.
And said, oh, Mom, like my friends want to hang out after school. Like, I know you were going to come get me. And I'm like, it's fine. Like, I will be there. I'm going to be in the area tomorrow morning. I'll just come get you afterwards. Like, and I know she does the same to you guys. Like, oh, I'm just going to go to Mom's, like, whatever. I just want to do that. And I know she feels like she can say that to both of us. And I've said to her before, like, I don't want you to feel like, if I'm like, no, it's fine, stay at your dad's, that it means I don't want you here, because I always want you here.
Well, I think it was last week she was with you, and she was like, I'm on my way. I was like, okay. And, like, mind you, like, Aubrey was, like, literally on top of me, like, trying to reach for my phone. She's like, are you mad at me? And I was like, no. She's like, well, you always say, like, oh, I
can't wait to see you or whatever. Yeah.
Of course I can't wait to see you.
Yeah.
Like, of course I can't wait to see you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think I'm really happy that we do have that openness, because it's like, you know, if you guys are going to Maine or whatever, like, I'm like, yeah, go, you know, like, I'm never going to stop you, because the reality, however harsh it is that she has two families.
Yeah.
You know, and I never wanted her to not have a relationship with John's side. You know, she's so close with Dave and Janine. She's so close with John's brothers and her cousins on that side, and same for my side. But I never wanted to be like, well, I'm the mom, so she needs to be closer to, you know, I'm glad she has a relationship with your parents.
Yeah.
You know, like, I'm glad she talks about Patrick's twins, and you know what I mean? Like, I'm glad she has a sister when she goes to your house, you know? And I think, just to call out, we were talking about it a little bit before we started recording, but, like, she is the best sister.
Amazing.
Like, unbelievable.
It makes me so happy.
Yeah.
You know, she is just, you know, she's so good, not only with her sisters, but with her cousins, and just to be able to see how she interacts with them. And she's such a kind, caring, nurturing, loving human being.
Yeah,
and I
really
think
is.
that is a huge reflection of her upbringing and how she was raised, and really, you know, you and John being the pillar of that.
Yeah. But then, obviously, and not just saying that, like, you've obviously been a huge influence in her life. I mean, she will say she doesn't remember her life prior to you. Like, you don't, I mean, she probably doesn't have memories of being a 2-year-old, you know?
Yeah.
And Kyle, because he's been such a positive influence on her as she's gotten older too, you know?
Absolutely.
And I think your parents, my parents, John's parents, she's had really good relationships with everyone in her life. And I think that's kind of, like, helped form her to be that loving person that she is today. But she couldn't have been that person without you. And I really, really mean that.
Thank you, Meghan. I really appreciate that. She literally, you said, like, I typically will text you on her birthday, but, like, I'm so grateful to you for allowing me to cultivate and have the relationship that I have with her, because she's my world. She's my everything.
I know. And it's so amazing to me that when she's not with me, that she does get to have that. I think we can wrap it up.